Welcome to the storm before emotional intelligence. I'm certified in emotional intelligence through mental health systems out of Canada. So I do a lot of emotional intelligence assessment results and design coaching plans around EQ. Now, what I'm about to share, I think there's a gray area. And one might argue, well, wait a minute, that's emotional intelligence. And you may not be wrong. I believe what happens before emotional intelligence can start is we have to understand there's an emotional interpretation. And we teach something called RIRE. And RIRE is our four-step process of where emotional interpretation comes from. We react, that's the R, the first R. Then we have our I, we interpret. And then A, we articulate. And then the last R is reflect. We rarely get to reflection. And emotional interpretation is really caused by our lack of training, our lack of teaching. So I'll test it. How many of you have gone through a semester, year-long course in high school or college on how to seek and accept feedback transparently and professionally? I bet you it's none. Yet we have this top-down trajectory of where we teach leaders, you have to go give really good feedback. You have to understand how to give multiple layers of feedback or coaching or mentorship or what have you. We put it on the leader, but there's a receiver. So what can we do? We have to teach and practice. Now, I go back to emotional interpretation. That RIRE, R, I react. If somebody says, Tim, you look terrible in that green shirt, that doesn't calm me down. That doesn't make me feel okay. What that essentially does is it gets me riled up. My blood pressure goes up. My emotions go up. What happens to logic and rational behaviors after that? I'll give you another example. I was at a volleyball tournament the other day, and I was talking to my wife. I was turned to my right, and I was talking to a coach from another team, and I was watching my ex-high school team play. And the head coach is a really good friend of mine. And I was analyzing the match, and our team wasn't playing well. And I said, yeah, the other team is just faster. They're quicker. Their transitions are better. I never said a kid's name. So finally, a woman next to me turns to me and she goes, you're sitting in the parents section. And I said, yeah. And I knew exactly where this was coming from. And she probably heard things she didn't like. And she goes, you're just really being negative. I was not being negative. She perceived me as being negative because I was saying things. And I later found out who she was and which kid on the team it was. And I thought maybe she was upset by the way her kid was playing. I don't know. And I turned to her and I said, I'm not talking to you. I was never even addressing her. And by the way, I was seated there for 20 minutes before. And I thought about it afterwards. Could I have handled it differently? And then I get a text from the ex-coach, and he calls me and says, I hear you had a little interesting interaction with one of our parents. And I said, I wasn't, but he goes, you don't need to explain. I know you, because he was calm. The parent went up to him after the match and said, I just want to let you know what happened. It was not a big deal to me, but it's now becoming a big deal because what she was reacting to was probably something that got her riled up emotionally. Maybe me, maybe I was at fault. But she could have said what? You know what? I'm frustrated right now hearing you. I don't know the sport as well as you do, or I don't know what you're alluding to, but I feel like it's negative. Now, I don't know if I would have taken it well, but it's like, what are the set of rules of what I can talk? She was reacting. She was interpreting I was being negative. What did she do? She articulated it. She goes to the head coach after the match in which they just lost and felt this was an important issue. She never got to reflection, or maybe she did. I shouldn't say that. That's what happens in the workplace. So what happens right afterwards, I was at a restaurant, was picking up something for dinner, and a manager came up to an employee and said, and whispered to her, but did it within earshot of a customer, which is not a comfortable thing for an employee to go through. The minute that manager went into the kitchen, two employees came up to her and she goes, oh, did you hear him? It's like, I was here so early in the morning. And what he was saying is to plug something into the cash register correctly. It had nothing to do with her coming in at 5 a.m. So what she did is she reacted. She was defensive. She internalized it. I can't believe he came up to me. And I even came in early to help the team out. She articulated, she told the two other employees, what do employees do when they hear stuff from other people? They go and tell other people. And it gets back to that manager. Who the heck would want to manage teams today, right? we rarely get to reflection. So, what's the trick? You have that thing from your left to right. I react, and hopefully, we get to reflection. Reverse them. We need to teach people to reflect. Why did you get that feedback? That woman at the volleyball match could have turned to me and said, you know, help me understand what you're talking about. Teach me instead of immediately assuming I was being negative. I never once said anything that was negative. When we have reactions like in that restaurant, what that employee could have done is just taken a deep breath and said, he's right. I was keying in the wrong thing into the register, which she was. So emotional interpretation is that I think it's that wall we got to climb before we start to craft and develop our own emotional intelligence. What are your thoughts?